I want to know who your mystery teams are for 2021. I got, count them, 5 that I want to go over right now. The first one I want to start with is Texas, because there are some things happening in Austin, Texas, even as you and I sit here and speak on this Tuesday evening if you're watching live. I had a question that was submitted for the Late Kick Extra podcast, which I record every Tuesday and Thursday. You can find that in the podcast feed right now. But the question was, have you seen Texas' schedule? What if they start 2-5? Which I don't think is going to happen, but here was the reasoning. The emailer said they play Louisiana. We all know that that's a very solid team. They go to Arkansas. You see the schedule here if you're watching on YouTube in week 2. Those are both tough games. They got Rice, so generally you expect to beat Food. But then you've got Texas Tech, went to overtime with them last year. They go to TCU, a team that just outright beat them last year. And then they got Oklahoma, lost to them. They'll be a double-digit dog to them in all likelihood. And then they've got Oklahoma State after Red River. And they went to overtime against them last year, and Oklahoma State will be coming off a bye week. So certainly the emailer is saying all these games aside from Rice, they're losable. What if they start 2-5? Well, my question is, what is that up to, 7? What if they start 4-3? 4-3 would be terrible. In a Texas fan's mind, 4-3 would be terrible. So I don't think they're going 2-5. So let's throw the disaster scenario out the window. There are 2 ways this is going to go, and this is what I wanted to circle back around to and talk about what's happening today. Remember when we were talking on the Sunday show about the quarterback situation at Texas, and I asked you to keep an eye on how Steve Sarkisian and his offensive staff started to divide reps. And the guess was, if we saw that decidedly shift in these practice reports coming into this week, then you're probably looking at a decision being made. Well, guess what's happened, friends? The reps have started to shift, and not in the way of Casey Thompson, who would probably be listed as your favorite in a lot of the preview magazines. No, it's Hudson Card, according to Horns 24/7 and our guys on the ground in Austin there, taking a majority of the first team reps with Texas past couple of practices, not just today. Now, they, should be noted, have an open practice tomorrow. A lot of speculation, mostly of the wild variety out there, that this is just a classic setup. I think there are 99 problems on Steve Sarkisian's mind, but setting up the fans to fool him at Fan Day, not one of them. I don't quite think that's lyrical in nature, but I don't think that's what's going on. There are a couple of ways this goes, and this is what would concern me if you ask me my biggest concern with Texas in 2021. Stated it the other night. I'll restate it before we move on. I don't think, no matter which quarterback gets picked here, I don't think they're going to have a smooth takeoff into the season. I just don't think it's realistic to expect Texas to outright roll Louisiana and then go into Reynolds Razorback Stadium and roll Arkansas. It would be great in an ideal world. That's how it would happen for Texas. I don't think that's how it's going to happen. So if they win both those games, we don't have big problems. But if they lose one, or God forbid, both of them, you've got huge problems because you are not established. Your coaching staff has not established itself there. The culture has not had time to take root. And here's the problem. If there is not a quarterback who snatches this job by the throat, makes it obvious, like I said the other night, not just to the staff, but to everybody, to where everybody's on board with the decision, no matter what the outcome is, everyone's on board. If you don't have that happen, then the guy you put out there is just the guy you put out there. There's not going to be consensus in your locker room. There may not even be consensus on your staff, although outwardly they'll say the right things. And the moment the wheels get wobbly on the car, the first thing people want to ask is, why aren't we playing the other guy? Now, hopefully your coaching staff doesn't do that. But what will happen is some of the fan base will do that. This is not a Texas thing. This is a college football thing. Some of the local beat will do that. That's not a Texas thing. That's a college football thing. But here will be the Texas problem, dare I say conundrum, if and when that arrives. That can seep into your locker room, not from the outside. It may be in there the whole time. And here's how it normally happens. It's normally not your leaders. It's not the guy starting. It's the guy who's running with the twos at outside linebacker who thinks he should be running with the ones. And they're looking for anything they can do in that locker room to start to curry some folks to their side. They're already a little bit bitter. This happens on every team. You got some folks bitter who think they should be starting and they're not. And the first opportunity they see when things go sideways to start getting in people's ear and saying, hey, I should be starting. I'm not. That quarterback should be starting. He's not either. That stuff festers. You know it because you've seen it happen long before Sark ever got to Texas. That would be my biggest concern with them. So this is not a bakery. This is not a bunch of cupcakes they play right off the bat. So yes, I'm watching that very closely. What I hope is that coaching staff watched the film from the scrimmage, which we didn't get to do, and they saw Hudson Card start to make big-time moves, And he is decisively taking the job. That's what I hope is happening. How about Penn State? The big mystery team here, too. Now, this is not a mystery in and of itself as to why I would put them here. Penn State fans seem to be in what I call a trust but verify mood. They don't doubt the coaching staff. They don't doubt the level of athlete on the roster. They don't doubt that they can win most every game on their schedule. They could even paint you a picture. They could even carve you a path through Columbus, Ohio, where they come out with a win. Unlikely, but possible. But every other game on their schedule, yes, they believe they could win it. And for the record, I believe they could win every other game on the schedule. So it's trust but verify. You trust you got a quality team. You trust your coaching staff. You also trust the new offensive coordinator, Mike Yurcich. And you trust that you can reasonably explain away the result in 2020. All these things you trust, but you got to verify it. That's the second part. And verification is going to start very early. Here you see the schedule. They are not favored. They are a dog at Wisconsin in week 1. I could go on, but I just want to stop there. September 4th. I don't think people fully understand how wild the swing will be coming off that game. That's going to be a competitive game. You lose that one 24-20, win it 24-20. In reality, you probably played to about the same level. The outcome's what matters. We all understand that. That's the name of the game. Think about the swing. If you're a Penn State fan and you beat Wisconsin 24-20, you beat them as a dog on the road, then you get to come home and you got Ball State coming in, then you got the whiteout game, then you got Nova. We're starting 4-0. We're going to be 4-0 when Indiana comes in here to get back on them. That swing this way. Swing that way is you lose 24-20, 27-17. And then you go into immediate wounded animal mode. And no matter how well you played and how hard you fought, there is that memory in the back of your mind that sneaks into the front of your mind that this is how last year started. We started last year, and it doesn't matter if you're competitive. If it's a giant L instead of a giant W, look at how it started. We're showing you the record right now. L, 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 L. Boy, how quickly, by the way. 1 L became 2 L's, became 4 L's, became 5 L's. And so that creeps into the front. Well, here's what that does. Think about the swing here. From the win against Wisconsin, and you got the whole world at your fingertips, to losing against Wisconsin, and there sneaks in the mystery. Because wouldn't you know it, it could be by week 3 when Auburn comes in there. You find yourself, however this works out, by the 3rd week of September in must-win mode, in what our buddy J.C. Sherbert would call a wounded animal mode. How's that possible? Well, college football is how it's possible. This is a big mystery team, the Penn State Nittany Lions. LSU is probably the entire poster child of a program for mystery team in 2020, or 21, not 20. We know what we got in 2020. You cover LSU, you follow LSU very close. It's easy to get drunk on LSU. For that matter, it's easy to get drunk at LSU. But on LSU is when you start to look at the team. You start to look at all these shiny pieces. You remember a vast majority of the names from the recruiting world. If you follow recruiting, they go off your radar, and then they come back on the radar, and you say, I remember that guy. Oh, I remember that guy. That's kind of what it's like looking up and down LSU's too deep. Max Johnson, it's very easy to remember his gamer mentality going into the swamp and doing what they did last year, and then he finishes it with a bang against Ole Miss. It's very easy to look at this really healthy mixture they have of veteran guys, more veteran guys like Kayshon Boutte, he's going to explode on the national scene this year. And then younger guys who we talked about the other day making big moves, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors. Very easy to look at that wide receiver stable and say, yep, those are guys we can go into battle with. It's very easy to look at guys like Eli Ricks, who stands the chance, by the way, because he's playing opposite side of the field as Derek Stingley this year, to probably rise up draft boards. He'll have another year, but to rise up draft boards and rise up those national player rankings and All-American rankings as much as anyone. But you got Ricks and Stingley and McLaughlin. It's Ali Gay. It's very easy to look at their defense and say, I buy into all this. Yes, thus the ability to get drunk on this team. But you know what else you can do? Here is the mystery. You can also look at that offensive line and you can say, I don't know, because I got to cross Dare Rosenthal off. I see these names. I don't know if they can play championship caliber football. I don't know if they can play 10-win caliber football. I just don't know yet. You can look at the names in the backfield at the tailback position. And you can remember, because I even feel this way, the immense potential you think Price and Emory have. You can think that. But it's kind of like we talked about with Penn State. You trust it, but then you got to see it verified, and you haven't seen it verified yet. You can look around. I think it's totally fair to ask, well, with all the uncertainty from last year and what we didn't see from them last year and the lessons that team didn't learn last year, do I trust them to finish games? I don't know. I think it's very fair at the very least to ask that. That's what makes LSU 2021 a mystery team to me. Now I want to stay in the West, but I want to go up the road a little bit to Oxford, Mississippi. This team's not that big of a mystery to me. It's not a team I expect to contend for a national championship or a playoff spot necessarily. But the Ole Miss Rebels are not ranked in the AP poll I saw the other day, and that's garbage. So I would ask anyone this. If you've got a vote out there, and you voted Ole Miss outside the top 25, let's just pick a name, Coastal Carolina. I picked Coastal Carolina out of thin air. They are ranked. If I arranged a charity bowl between these two teams, and they're playing this Saturday, it is Ole Miss, it's Coastal Carolina, you have to put your next year's paycheck on the outcome. Who are you choosing to win the game? None of you, well, let me scratch that. Far less than 50% of you are choosing Coastal Carolina to win the game. Yet you ranked them. You didn't rank Ole Miss. That's fine. Let me tell you what you can set your watch to. You can set your watch to week 3 coming, Ole Miss being 3-0, going into a bye week, and looking at that trip to Tuscaloosa, and then week 4 arrives, and you got Ole Miss coming in. They're ranked way inside the top 20. Bama's probably still number 1 in the country. We'll see. Maybe still number 1 in the country. And you'll be asking, instead of could this lead to Ole Miss being ranked, you'll ask yourself, could Ole Miss lose competitively today and still rise in the rankings? I think that's what you'll be asking. They open against Louisville. It's going to be a good competitive game in Atlanta. It's a standalone game. It's Labor Day night. I think they'll win the game. And at that point, you won't have to worry about whether they're ranked or not. They will be at that point. Last team I want to look at here is Iowa. Have we spoken a lot about Iowa? No, we haven't. We've spoken some about Iowa State. There's a lot of internal excitement at Iowa right now about the quarterback position. Now, Iowa is a contender in the Big Ten. I think they're off the national radar, but they're off the national radar because you really think of Iowa, you don't think they have enough explosive ability offensively. Well, that's all well and good. They've earned that reputation. I get why you think that. Spencer Petras is the starting quarterback here. Let me take you through last year for him. Last year, he doesn't get spring because no one got spring in the Big Ten. And then, despite the fact that he himself did not contract COVID, he had to quarantine for 30 days, thus missing summer workouts. And you know what the start of the Big Ten season was. It's like watching a plane bounce on the runway 4 times before it finally gets off the ground. I would say more like a crop duster with duct tape around one of the propellers. And watching that thing bounce down a South Georgia all-dirt runway and it barely gets off the ground. That was Big Ten season last year. And the pilot all the while was trying to sabotage the flight. So Spencer Petras was what he was last year. They have seen quantum improvement from him in camp. And they're very happy that the passing game has been a little more efficient than they thought it would be. Still got a ways to go. Overthrow here, overthrow there. They think he's going to be very good. Petras is a huge kid. So physically, there's no need to develop. It's all a mental thing. It's all a precision and accuracy and timing and decision-making thing. They think he's a lot closer than maybe you'd be led to believe if you just listen out there in the college football ether. Pay attention to this team. They open against Indiana, and they go to Iowa State in week 2. So for better or for worse, a lot of the book will be written on them because look at that schedule. Those are 2 tough games. Those are 2 top 20 ranked teams, according to the fabled AP poll at least. Who knows where the JP poll will have those teams. We may have Iowa State number 1. You got to be careful with Iowa State. But after that, they kind of go off the radar. Kent State, Colorado State, Maryland. But you'll either know about them and have a national profile by then, or you will have already tossed them aside by then. So those are the 5 mystery teams I'm paying attention to. Not an exhaustive list. I'm sure I'll get some other submissions, but those are 5 I'm looking at.